Welcome to the channel Tribe. In this session of Fireside Chat, we are having Vikas Mittal discussing on career paths for test leads and test managers.
Welcome everyone to this fireside chat on career paths for test leads and test managers by Vikas Mittal. Vikas is a tech evangelist. He's a keynote speaker. He's an investor. I'll give a detailed introduction about Vikas once I end the slides. And he's a browser stack champion also. Huge shout out to Browser Stack, who are our exclusive sponsor for all our community events and premier sponsor for all our conferences. It's because of companies like Browser Stack, we are able to facilitate these kind of events for free to the entire testing community. It's my pleasure to introduce Vikas. I had the chance of interacting with a lot of Vikas's previous reportees also, and they say Vikas does a lot of things, and what they say is completely right. So Vikas is already a senior leadership at a large services company. He's an angel investor. He does a lot of knowledge sharing on LinkedIn. He is a virtual CTO to a lot of startups in this country, and he is also a Forbes Technology Council member, a Browser Stack a premium program member. And to us at Test Tribe, he has been a guiding force. He guides us on a lot of things and always ready for community initiatives like this. So with that, I would like to welcome Vikas on stage. Hi, Vikas. So thank you, Vikas, for doing this. You have always been very kind to us, agreeing to share knowledge in sessions like this. And I welcome you on behalf of the entire testing community and the entire test type community. Even before I picked up my first question, we already have questions coming from people. Already, there are questions coming from people. So let's quickly start. Uh, the first question is Vikas, which I think a lot of us in the audience might be feeling here. As test leads and test managers, the mid-career crisis, what they call, becomes quite real, and because people might not be connected to a lot of other people, they might feel that is it happening with me only, or is it a generic thing? So what is your view on mid-career crisis? Is it very common, or is it like happens with a few people who need to do something better?
So I would probably take it a notch further, right? The midlife career crisis is not common only in testing, it's common across all walks of life. So whether you are in engineering, you are in marketing, you are in sales, pretty much everyone has a midlife career crisis, right? And
Correct.
the only way to come out of this midlife career crisis is not to really depend on your past accomplishments or past laurels. Definitely use your past experience, but don't fall in the trap of believing that what got you this far can take you further. That's not going to happen because, see, the challenge with the midlife career crisis is not about that suddenly my skills are not in demand. The challenge is a
Correct.
lot of people believe that what I've been doing for last 9 years, what I learned in my first year, should count now as 10 years of experience.
Correct.
So you probably got better by repeating what you did in your first year of a career for the next 9 years. You got better at it, but what is new which you have learned? If you're doing the same thing which you were doing 9 years back, then I better replace you with a 1 year guy or a 2 year guy.
Oh, that's true. I think that's a very valid point. We as we grow in career, we intend to take experience as the merit, which is not the equivalent of merit by and large. Your merit will still remain your skill and your value to the org in general.
And I can relate it back to my own life, right? I started out as a Java developer. I'm not sure how many of you have seen my LinkedIn profile or seen like have interacted with me in the past. I started out as a Java developer, moved on to become an enterprise architect, got bored, moved into testing by choice, got bored, moved into running a business line and service line as a P&L head by choice, got bored again, and now I'm moving to another new in my life. So that's essentially how. I'm not saying that I'm the prime example, but that's essentially how you can never have a midlife career crisis.
Yeah, that's true. And I think the last AMA we had with someone who's Anuj Magazine, he also had a similar career path. That okay, I started as a QA head and then moved to different functions by choice because you end up getting bored, and then you start to prepare yourself for the next challenge, and that's how it is. So there's a related question, Vikas, on this by Kalpana. I think this question points to what we're discussing right now. She's asking, how should one decide the domain while moving up on the ladder, or let's say while trying to get a new skill? Is it necessary to have a specialized expertise in one of the testing domains, or is it more of a generalized view which one should take?
Okay. So I think this question is confusing on two aspects, right? Or probably Kalpana wanted to ask a different question, but she's got confused on two things. First of all, you're talking about domain, which is like a functional
Correct.
domain. Whether I want to be a expert in travel, I want to be expert in retail, healthcare. That is domain. And then you have testing. Two separate, completely separate things. You can definitely become a domain-led testing expert or a testing expert in a specific domain. And I'll tell you from my experience, the opportunity size for people who are expert in a specific domain is always there. You have a lot of generic testers who don't know a specific domain, who have basically been hip hopping between multiple different domains but never gained the depth or the breadth of experience in a specific domain because they always kept moving. Just to give you a point in case example, I'm working with one of the leading equity market research company in the world, right? And they don't have more than 10% people in test automation. 90% of the testers aligned with them are equity market research domain experts who are paid
Got it.
2x of a tech SDET on the team. Just because
Got it.
these guys know what equity market is all about. They know what a equity market trader would be using as the software for, and what difference of a small bug can make on the equity stock market. So
Correct.
that essentially is, if you're deep in your domain, there is always value, there's always availability for you.
I think that circles back to what you always say. What I always interacted with you, and you have always said that the testers must understand the business impact and the business which they're working on, so as to create multifold times value of their work. Otherwise, they'll be stuck in the web of technology, but not be able to create business value out of their work.
Absolutely true. As a tester, you don't want to be some a guy who's just clicking on some buttons randomly to figure out probably I would land up on some bug.
Correct. That's true. Uh, Okay, I'll take my next question, Vikas. As test leads or test managers, I think this was a separate question, but I'm merging right now, and you can answer as per your own convenience. What are the career paths available for test leads and test managers in general, from your point of view?
Okay. So now, see, the word manager in the Indian context has a very funny connotation to it, right?
Correct,
And it goes back to probably my generation of people, or probably the generation before me, or a generation before them, which started the IT industry. See,
correct,
when Infosys started, a guy with 6 years experience was recognized as a project manager. When the
true,
industry matured a little further, a 6 year guy became a test lead, and a 10-year guy became a project manager. When the industry matured further, a 10-year guy became a lead, and a 15-year guy started becoming a manager. So the years of experience kept on increasing. But if you look at it from an Indian IT services construct, or even from a product company construct, majority of people who play the role of a manager are essentially people managers. The further and further they go up in the management roles, go further and further away from the technology, and they potentially end up becoming a people manager. I would never want to become a people manager because that's the most insecure position you can land up in as a technologist. So if I would probably go back 10 years and somebody would ask me what I would do, I would prefer to pursue a tech career path unless and until I want to go really into people management. But if you are trying to ride two boats together, you'll fall in between. You have to choose, I want to pursue a complete tech career path. There is enough growth there, or I want to become pure play generic people manager. If you're asking for the first element, that I want to be a pure play tech from a test lead, what should I do next? See, you look at the technology landscape today, there is a study from Gartner that by 2025, more than 50% of the application will have some element of touchless capability in the app. We already have Google Map, which takes voice as a command. You already have your lot of social media apps which take voice as a command.
True.
Generative AI is already there.
True.
So with all of these, the avenue to test or the need for testers is only going to increase from here on. Because touchless is something which will be not straightforward to automate. Similarly, generative AI is something will not be straightforward to automate. So as a tester, I think this probably can be the golden period for testers if you really are tech aligned, if you can really pursue and identify. So if so I had a similar session with my team a few days back, and they gave them there are 5 areas which you should focus on if you want to have a prospering career going forward. First one is understand how a touchless technology works and learn how to test a touchless technology application. Second is understand how 5G would come, evolve, and what impact something like a 5G would have on the technology landscape, and be a tester who understands 5G and how 5G enabled applications can be tested. A lot of people believe 5G is just faster broadband or faster network. Yeah, it is faster broadband, faster network, but its implications are way beyond just being
Way
speed,
beyond that. That's true.
right? The third area which you would like to focus on is how the low code, no code solutions and applications built using low code, no code can be tested. By 2025, 45% of the overall application development will be done using low code, no code solutions. The fourth element is, if you want to really have, is understand how the platform economy works, or how really platforms like ServiceNow, Salesforce, Workday, these platforms of the world, they really work because there is a growing need of people who specialize and understand these platforms and know how to test on these platforms. The fifth, the most critical element is how can you test data? Because
Oh, yes.
ultimately, if I'm a good data tester, not an ETL tester, I'm not talking
Correct,
about
correct.
ETL testing.
Yeah,
I'm talking
yeah.
about the people who can understand the algorithms, people who can understand how a data warehouse, data stream, data lake, data ocean, those concepts work, because the other four are completely dependent on this one. So as a tester, it's not all about test automation. Test automation probably would be probably not more than 20% of the overall testing landscape. The remaining 5 pieces would cover 80% of testing landscape.
God, I think that makes a lot of sense because that's what we always keep discussing, right? As testers, we focus on so we believe all testing types or automation testing, they are generally more horizontal in nature. But what you're trying to tell here is that there are verticals which you need to be aware about, which you need to be equipped about, so that ready for future. And I think these are very valid points. And low code, no code, I think we should look beyond low code, no code automation tools also, because if you look around us, low code, no code is everywhere. We use Zapier at Test Tribe like crazy, and it has helped us so much. It's such a life saving no code tool. Otherwise, you would be spending hours and people doing random work which a low code automation tool has done it like crazy. And I think the platform economy point is also very valid with so much of Salesforce testing, SFDCs, and CRM, Microsoft CRM Dynamics kind of openings coming in. That point makes a lot of sense. To a lot of people who are asking what technologies we should learn to grow in career, I think Vikas has already partially answered that question. If you have a specific question on that, please mention it, and I'll take it immediately. Uh, uh, okay, this is a question, Vikas. This is a question I think related to your profile, your career path. Like you have changed multiple functions, right? Started as a Java developer, then moved to enterprise architecture, and then moved to testing, and then to P&L head, etc. How easy is it to change a job function, and what is your inputs on how can someone change a job function or completely?
Okay. So changing a job function is not easy, to be honest, because when I did my first move from being a solution enterprise architect to moving into testing, and that to by choice, a lot of people looked at me with a very mischievous smile, right? Because for them it is like, okay, probably you failed as an architect, that is why you're moving to testing by choice. Or probably you could not deliver on what you wanted to deliver, that is why you're moving to testing by choice. No, I moved to testing by choice because I saw people working with me on the projects making all the wrong decisions on testing, and my team spending hours and hours of time, huge amount of money trying to build test automation which never lasted more than a release. So I got frustrated with seeing all the bad practices adopted by them in testing. We said, okay, let me switch hats and figure out, is it really that difficult to figure out how to do testing better, or can I make a living out of it? And that's what I moved. But I think the template which I follow to basically decide where I'm going to move next is I always plan 3 years in advance. So I always talk about what I'm going to do 3 years from now, or where I want to be 3 years from now, and how it aligns with A, my personal goals, B, how it aligns with technology. So so all the five areas which I talked about right now, I've been reading upon these areas for the last 2 years.
Oh,
So I've been preparing to basically go deep into these areas for last 2 years. So I've been like preparing myself, reading about it, networking with people in those areas, not from testing background, but from business side and the tech side, understanding the challenges, the needs, and the demands of these five areas for last 2 years. And one thing which I always tell my team: don't aspire for your next promotion. Like don't eye your boss's seat, eye your boss's seat. So that, because if you aim two level high, you will at least achieve one level high.
got it.
And
I think that makes a lot of.
last
Yeah, please go ahead. Sorry.
and
Sorry.
last and the most important is, don't worry about what people would say. People would say anything anyways. So
Yeah.
just go with what you want to do, how you want to do it, and forget about what people say.
That's so true. And I changed. I moved from testing to marketing, and when I initially decided, I faced a lot of issues, and then I had to spend 1 year figuring out stuff, and then, like you mentioned, deeply studying things, and then it took me 1 year to change job function, and quite a lot of sacrifices in that respect. But I think what you said is perfectly valid. That as professionals, we need to be less transactional and more visionary in our own for our own self, not for the world. We don't want to become the next visionary leader of the world. For our own self, we need to have a vision of 3 years or 5 years down the line. uh, cool, let's take some audience questions. Like you mentioned, this is a question from Moshe, who says, since you mentioned data testing, what's the opportunity for testers in data science in general?
So, so the see, okay. So data is garbage in, garbage out,
Ego.
right? So essentially, what is happening, and if you look at so there are few white papers, and I can probably share links in the end. There are a few white papers which talk about the biggest failures in data programs globally, right?
Correct.
And the majority of the reason why the data programs fail is not because wrong algorithm was chosen. Obviously, there's some fail because the wrong algorithm was chosen, but a lot of them fail because the wrong data was captured. Because the APIs you're probably feeding the data in the data warehouse was one, not putting them in the right tables or not putting them in the right context. So data is not only about getting data in the database. Data is also
Correct.
about getting data with the right context in the database. And with all these agilists coming in and preaching the world that you don't need testers, this is the perennial problem which came in, because obviously when you don't have testers, you get all the wrong kind of data in the wrong kind of places. So if you want to be essentially focused on the data science field, like I said in my other five charters, the most important is data. So if you want to
Correct.
be a tester in the data science space, basically spur up your knowledge of uh, data, understand how data is actually stored, what are different ways or forms in which data can be stored, understand the taxonomy of the way data is stored in the project, understand what kind of different machine learning algorithms are available for to leverage, improve your knowledge of the cloud tools, Because
Correct.
what is going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years, a lot of roles which we see in the data science world will go away, because a lot of these cloud providers are coming with predefined tools
Fine. Yeah.
which would create algorithms on the fly on their own, which would
Mm.
refine the algorithm on their own. So for you
Mm.
to be ahead in this world, focus and spend your time on what tools and utilities are being provided by the cloud providers from a data perspective. What are the different ways in which the data can be stored, and how these algorithms really work. Another key element from a data standpoint is also identify which domain you want to work in. Because application of data or the usage of data or the algorithms will be very different from one vertical domain to the next vertical domain. So you may want to become an expert in a one vertical domain and who understands how the data schema work in that particular domain.
No, that is true. I think that was a very elaborative answer, and I hope it answered Moshe's fundamental question. There are two questions related to interview, Vikas. I'll quickly put them on stage and probably will merge them in the interest of time. Uh, this I think let's take it at a generic level. Sangeeta has asked at a for a test lead level how to showcase yourself from an interview point of view. That is one question, and the other one which was related to interview is from. Let me just find this. Okay, okay. This is from Girish, who is a senior resident at Cornerstone. What are the key skills do you look for when hiring QA candidates? And I think specific tips we can skip right now. So these are two related questions like what do you look when you hire, and how can one stand out? Let's say if they're interviewing to you
Okay. So there are three key skills which I look for in anyone, right? The first and the foremost is the communication skills. It's
fundamentally.
not about how well you speak.
Correct.
It is about how good you are at listening. So I look for people who are not ready to answer from the word go. I look for people who basically are ready to listen from the word go, understand the question in detail, understand the context in which the question has been asked, and then are able to frame and ask intelligent counter question. Because if you look at our job as a tech professional, that is 80% of our work schedule every day. 80% of the work which we do is all about understanding what the customer expects from us. The customer in this context can be your team lead, can be the product owner, can be your peers, or anyone, any stakeholder with whom you work. So you can only understand what they need from you if you are a good listener. Second, once you've understood what they have asked, are you able to rephrase what you've understood and ask intelligent questions to allow you to complete your work? Because once you have figured out what is the ask, what is the expectations from me, and what am I supposed to deliver, then 80% of your job is done. Next comes 20%, which is the skills, the technology skills. When you look at a technology skill, whether you are, so let's divide that into two levels. One is I'm coming in as an individual contributor. So when I'm looking at you as an individual contributor, I would look at your testing skills first, because I'm hiring you for a testing role. So I'll first like to understand that whether you really understand what testing is all about, right? And whether you are able to understand what is, so a very simple question which I ask, right? Everyone is, give me an example of a defect which is low severity, high priority. 80% of the
Acha.
people don't understand the difference between severity and priority.
That's so true. It's so true.
And it's not about people who are juniors. I'm talking about people coming with 10, 12, 15 years of experience to me, who don't understand this fundamental difference between severity and priority and how it impacts what, right?
That's so
So
true.
I so one of the common questions which I ask in my interview is, can you tell me three test cases which you would execute on WhatsApp? Everybody uses WhatsApp before you
Correct.
certify a build to go to production.
Three sanity test cases,
80%,
assuming.
yeah, correct. 80% of the people don't cannot answer this question correctly. They will
That's so
talk
true.
all around WhatsApp, trying to cover all everything around WhatsApp in those three test cases. Not possible.
Correct. Correct.
The second line of question which I asked them is about technology. I don't ask them about test automation. I ask them what was the technology, your application which you have tested till now built upon. Do you understand what was the architecture of your application? What was the architecture defined? And why certain technology choices were made in your project?
Got
And
it.
this is where the things start getting tricky. Majority of testers don't know whether they were using React JS or React Native. What is the difference between React JS or React Native? Whether they were using Java Spring Boot. Okay, Java Spring Boot. Yes, I was using Java Spring Boot, but which microservice architecture was being used in my application, and how this impacts my testing.
Testing, yeah, that's true.
And finally, I spent 5 minutes on test automation. That is where I ask, okay, what programming languages have you used? And I ask them about the framework architecture in test automation they have followed. And most of the people start the answer saying, we have XYZ folder structure in test automation. That is where somebody completely goes out of my selection process.
Got it. I think that's such a how do I put this into words? It's such a myth breaker kind of a stuff, right? People feel that as we grow into careers, as we grow bigger into careers, your automation skills become the sacred skills. But what you have started with is first is a human skill of becoming good communicators in general, right? That's a first human skill, not across testing but across any other function. And then second is the fundamental testing craft skill. And I think that's what automation testers SJets tend to ignore, that once they have the code now, they can ignore the craft, and which by now I've heard from a lot of leaders like you that craft is sacrosanct, and then comes technology and automation. So it's such a myth breaker, and I hope a lot of people here can relate to this and can probably have a better understanding of how hiring process goes on. There are two related questions. I'm merging them. The one is from Surbi. She's asking, what are the expectations from the role of test architect in the testing industry? And I think that becomes more relevant uh, since you mentioned a path of moving towards more tech managers rather than being people managers. I think this kind of question becomes more important. And there was another one from there was another from Nikhil. Those questions: after 7 years of experience and currently working as QA specialist, I want to pursue a technical path. So, what should be my next career path? QA lead or QA tech lead, or let's say QA architect?
Okay. So I'll answer the question from Nikhil first, right? There
Okay.
is a very big misconception in our industry that somebody who is coming from a testing background, right, cannot become a tech lead or cannot become a VP of engineering, cannot become a CTO,
Yeah.
right? And it's not because of our community as testers. It is basically how people believe that okay, this is how uh, things should happen. But I've seen a lot of people in my friend circle who have moved from being a tester or test manager or a test lead to become a VP engineering to become a CTO. Like even I act today as a virtual CTO for a lot of startups in India. See,
Correct.
it is not your dev background which makes you a CTO or a VP of engineering, right? We need to differentiate here. A CTO or a VP engineering is somebody who is technically aware to make the right technological decisions for the platform on what tech stack they are supposed to go on and how they can be ahead in terms of technology. They are not the ones who are sitting on the ground and actually coding, right? It's basically they are making the decisions along with the team to take them the right path towards technology. So people from a testing background can definitely become good tech leads, can definitely become good UP engineering institutes,
Correct.
provided you yourself break that that shell that I am encapsulated under testing, so I cannot really go outside. You have to become more technologically aware and probably showcase your knowledge by taking more sessions, being more active on social media platforms like LinkedIn, and being more active on sharing your knowledge with your peer group to be recognized
Correct.
as a tech talent. Now, coming to the question which should be asked, like, what is the expectation of a test architect? In fact, I had a very funny conversation today in the afternoon when I was on another panel discussion, and one of the panelists said that no, there is no role called test architects in the industry. Architects are generally limited only to development. In testing, you have test leads, test manager, blah blah
Managers,
blah.
test
I
directors.
said,
Yeah,
okay, and I was looking at his face. Why can't we have architects in testing? Who is
correct.
stopping? Like, what is essentially the role of an architect? The role of an architect is to define the standards and frameworks or procedures on which the remaining team follows. So why can't you have a test architect? Now, what is the expectation of a test architect? Like, I hire test architects. Right? I've myself played that role and grown to a P&L lead, right? So the expectation which I have from a test architect when I'm hiring a test architect is like I said in the beginning, somebody who has a good communication skills, somebody who has good fundamental testing knowledge, somebody who has more than good technical knowledge of the current technology
Correct.
stacks, somebody
Correct.
who can understand the difference between an event-driven microservices framework versus a triggered microservices framework, somebody who can understand monolithic code base versus microservices code base, what
Microsoft
is
code base.
synchronous versus asynchronous calls, why
That's true.
and what, where should something is implemented. Because unless and until you understand the technology behind an application, you cannot design a test strategy for that application. So
That's true.
expectation from a test architect is to define the test strategy for an application. Just to give you a point in case example, we all are using a lot of mobile apps, right? So let's suppose we talk about LinkedIn, right? I use
Correct.
LinkedIn on a web platform that is on my browser. I also have a LinkedIn app installed on my phone. So this, so to mimic a omni-channel experience for LinkedIn, I may start writing a post on the browser, but I don't
Correct.
complete it. I save it as a draft. But then I come back to my LinkedIn mobile app
Mobile
once
app.
I reach home. I want to complete that post and now post it. So that is an omni-channel journey where I expect the LinkedIn app to persist my data across web and
Data.
mobile platforms.
That's true.
So my expectation from a test architect would be how would you enable testing this specific omni-channel use case using test automation? A lot of people would come back and answer, I would create a code base to test this workflow using Selenium on web. I will create another code base using APM to test it
APM on
on my mobile app,
mobile.
and I'll use rest assured test on the API. Okay, you probably meet the end objective, but does not meet the workflow. I wanted
Workflow.
to use a single solution to test all three. So as a test architect, my expectation is that you would come with a technology solution which integrates these different tools to allow me to write one single script which can test all three workflows in a single use case and make it easier for the next 90% test engineers creating automation scripts to write a script on this. So that is for
That
me the goal of a test architect, someone who brings in efficiency, someone who brings in efficacy in how we test.
I think that's such a valid point. That first of all, I think thanks for breaking that myth among people that architects can only be, let's say, enterprise architects or dev architects. They can be test architects, and I think those are such the nuances have been really good on this question. My next question is Vikas, which is I think must be a question for a lot of people, and I think we should attempt this. Is what should be the career path options for experienced manual and functional professionals with minimal and no programming skills, experience, and expertise? And I'm assuming since we are doing this for test leads and test managers, let's assume that experience level and then try and attempt this question.
See, first of all, anybody who's asking this question, and Jayant, testing is testing. Next, everything is automated checking. So there's nothing called
Okay.
manual testing. It is testing and automated checks, right? So the next time somebody calls you a manual tester, you can just reply, "I am a test engineer, and my teammates use automation tools to perform checking." That is
Correct.
the description of the job life, right? Now, like
Correct.
I said at the beginning, all the five areas which I mentioned, Ashutosh, which are going to be the growth areas from a technical industry perspective, do not require any automation skills.
Fundamental true.
So you can be a good data tester without knowing automation. You can be a good low code, no code tester again without knowing automation. You can be a good platform tester without being an automation engineer. Just to give you one fundamental example around Salesforce, right? Majority of the issues which come around Salesforce are not only about workflow driven. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
issues on Salesforce come because the Salesforce developer does not know how to configure the right authentication, authorization, or practices and policies across Salesforce. So they end up consuming a lot of Salesforce API calls for a product which is not required. Recently in my team, I had 5 guys who were pure functional testers, certified as Salesforce developers, and now they are able to add more value on the project, plus the career prospects obviously zoomed because they now understand Salesforce inside out and can be a good, more effective tester. So, like all those 5 areas which I mentioned, you don't need automation skills. You just have to get out of that mindset that I'm a functional
Mindset.
tester or a manual tester. You have to get away from somebody who's looking at a story, documenting test cases, and clicking some buttons. No, those jobs will not exist going forward.
Exactly. That's true.
Only job which would exist going forward is somebody who's adding value to the ecosystem.
I think that's so fundamentally true again. I can go on this. My rant can go on this, but I don't want to rant right now. Uh, this again is an important question. This is from Anu, who's a SQ engineer at Astra. What sources of learning do you recommend for QAs? And do you recommend any kind of certification in the areas where you're interested to learn outside your job role? uh, to land a job in that particular technology. I think she's trying to ask that if I want to change to a different technology, is what kind of learning resources do you recommend, and is certification of does a major help in landing a job outside your current technology?
Okay. So, so my views are very polarized around the word certification, right? And that is why a lot of people from the certification bodies don't like me. Because my fundamental view is all certification is crap. Certification only puts you in the firing line. Because the moment I see somebody say, I am ISTQB certified, I am XYZ certified, I get even more cautious and pointed upon asking them questions. Right? So I fundamentally don't believe in any testing certification. They are all a waste of
Hmm.
time and effort, and you should not spend time doing any testing certification. Now, the other question, and I think Mahesh, I'm not sure if Mahesh is on the call, Mahesh would recognize this because Mahesh and I had a conversation a couple of weeks back around okay, what sources should a tester focus on to learn something new. Today, the
Correct.
problem is there is no dearth of content. There is enough content. The problem is to identify what is the right content and who is
Content.
the right person to follow to learn that content from. There are enough influencers or YouTubers who believe they know testing and they are publishing videos after videos after videos about teaching people about what is testing, what is Selenium, what is Java, and what is rest assured, blah blah, bunch of things, but they themselves don't know anything about it. Because I have interviewed
Correct.
a lot of those guys, so-called influencers on LinkedIn, and I know the depth of their knowledge. So I think as a testing community, I think you guys at Test Drive are making an effort in bringing in the content from verified people who are actually genuinely there to help the testing community and who actually genuinely know the concept which you're trying to teach. But if
Correct.
somebody is looking to move away from testing and if they're looking at a certification of value, which brings true value to them from a job perspective, I would recommend you to focus on only two things. One is the platform. You can go for a certification on Salesforce, ServiceNow,
Salesforce.
Workday, Guidewire. There are multiple
CRM.
platforms on which you can get certified because those certifications hold value and they really check what you know. The second area where you can focus on getting certification is cloud.
Correct.
Because again, those
AWS.
certifications hold value and those certifications can prove at least you have some fundamental knowledge. But I'll still go back to my fundamental first point. all certification is crap if not followed by knowledge. I
That's
can
true.
have the certificate that makes people like me more conscious about asking you the questions in depth than verifying your knowledge. So first gain the knowledge and then think about getting a certification.
That's and that, like anything else, and like any degree for that matter, I think that is so true that you should not look at it as a tool which gives you an entry point into a interview or a job, because you might still enter into it, but staying there and exiting out from it is going to become very difficult. Then it's said the same for degrees also. That's such a valid point. Again, because this is an interesting question, because while we move from one spectrum of manual testing or plus automated checking, there's another spectrum where there's an increasing demand for QA plus DevOps now, which Senthil Kumar presumes. What is the path for such a skill in your head?
So, okay, so this is something fundamental which I had conversation with a lot of my customers also. Like, what do you expect from a QA plus DevOps? Right? Let's first understand this QA plus
Correct.
DevOps. When a customer or when a company is interviewing you from a QA plus DevOps role, they're not looking for at you as a DevOps architect or as a DevOps solution guy or as somebody who
Correct.
will set up the DevOps pipeline from scratch. There are
Correct.
some companies which do, but still majority don't. What they are
Correct.
basically looking for is, are you aware of what DevOps is? Are you aware
Correct.
of how you can integrate your automation code with the DevOps pipeline? Can you trigger a DevOps pipeline from an automation code or not? Can you essentially analyze the failure in coming up in the pipelines or not? They're not looking at you from a perspective that, okay, now I have the code base. Can you please set up the DevOps pipeline for me? No, that's not the expectation. The expectation is that you should be aware of DevOps, plus understand how you can leverage it and use it, and how you can take the benefit of a DevOps pipeline from a testing standpoint. And I fundamentally
True.
believe this is not a really tough skill to learn. Anybody with a good basic IQ can pick up this skill in less than 4 weeks.
Got
So
it.
yeah, as a person, you should definitely pick up this skill.
Okay. This is an interesting question, and this is an aspect which we discuss very less in testing discussions. This is from Rahul Bhavri, who is a resident coordinator at Mintical, and he has been very pointed in his question. What path would be beneficial in terms of adding value, becoming less redundant, monetarily, a managerial role, or a test architect role? So I think his question is very focused towards monetary compensations, and I think which might be a question in a lot of people's head, but they don't take that courage to ask such questions. So that's why I took this question upfront.
Okay. So Rahul, I think first of all, you are actually lucky to be in the organization where Mayank Dixit is right now. So
Okay.
if you need a good mentor, cannot be a better mentor for you than Mayank Dixit,
Okay, Mintical. Oh, I know Mike. Okay, yeah.
right? So Mayank is a very close friend of mine, right? And he and I have debated for hours and hours on such topics, right? So fundamentally, first thing, you're already sorted out. You're in a good place with a good person to lead and manage. But if you're looking from pure monetary perspective, like I probably answered this question early on, that if you become a pure manager, when I say pure manager, a pure people manager, then your job is always at risk. If you are in any technical technology role, you will always be well paid within India, outside India. You'll always be better recognized and appreciated anywhere in the globe. So if you are looking from
Correct.
a pure monetary perspective, stick to tech roles as long as you can.
Correct. I think that's
And
a
I'm not sure how many of you follow the news. Capital One today laid
correct.
off 1,100 people who were non-tech, who were agile coaches,
Oh
agile scrum master. The entire
God.
agile department was sacked.
Oh my goodness.
1,100
God.
people, Capital One. It's the news from today.
I don't know. I think as direct the question was, the answer was equally direct, that be as tech as possible, and I think that's such a relevant point.
For as long as
Okay,
possible, you can.
as long as possible. And I genuinely believe this now, considering being a people's manager only for quite some time and then now moving to a hands-on marketing role. As much as you can be hands-on, as much as you can get your hands dirty in your day-to-day job, still becoming that leader in having a leadership in you, it keeps you a lot more sane in your heart also. That's what I believe. Uh, Now there are two questions related to SDEX. Okay, one is from ourselves, one is for we collected from community, and this is one from Somalia. Somalia is asking, SDEX are more preferred than test engineers. How true is this in reality, considering a lot of job requirements these days, including dev plus test background? And then there was a question that what is the career path in SDETs, let's say, because SDETs have a kind of more flatter hierarchy as compared to a traditional testing hierarchy. So these are the two questions around SDETs which I would like you to attempt.
See, yes, I would say in the past 4 5 years, there has been growing trend towards moving everyone to an SDET role, right?
Correct.
But having said that, that has not reduced the need for functional testers. The need for functional testers has also increased along the line.
Correct.
What we need to understand is why there is a growing need for SDET roles. It's
Hmm.
not that companies want to replace functional testers. It's all about value-driven contribution. Companies believe, and I'm one of those who believe that I don't, like I said, I don't need people in my team who are just there to click some buttons. If you're adding value as a test engineer, that is, you're able to identify business scenarios, you're able to actually go beyond what a user story documents and bring in the actual user use cases to test, bring in your domain knowledge to test, then you're more than welcome on my team as equally as an SDET. Because having said that, 80% of the companies still are predominantly doing n plus 2 or n plus 1 from a test automation standpoint. That is,
Hmm.
the current sprint is always tested by a functional tester. The next sprint will automate what we wrote in the previous sprint.
Previous print.
So the need is always there, but yeah, if you intend to be only somebody who can convert a user story to a test case and then execute a test case, yeah, those jobs are going to be far and few going forward.
This is a question on your recommendations multiple times on understanding on learning about more cloud tools, right? So Sundar Sanam from QA QCACS from Chennai has this question. Cloud or any of the CRMs will have only developer course or administration course in general. They still we have not reached that stage where they're QA specific, let's say testing specific cloud courses. So how do we increase this knowledge? Should we take those courses, or how do we notch up our knowledge there?
Correct. So that essentially are the courses you are supposed to take, because see, what do you intend to gain from these courses? The intention to gain from these courses is to identify what the person playing that role will make a mistake or where he can make a mistake.
Correct.
That is what I'm supposed to find as a tester. So if you want to be a good Salesforce tester, you need first you to understand how the Salesforce development really works. What is the architecture, how the metadata in Salesforce is really configured to deliver the end functionality. And that is when you try to become a good Salesforce test engineer, because now you understand the fundamentals on how Salesforce really works. So yeah, don't wait or don't think about getting a testing specific certification on Salesforce. Go and do a developer level certification in Salesforce. Then you can try
Got
your hand at both being a developer, being a tester, or being a full stack.
Yeah, I think being a full stack is the thing these days. Now, this is again a buzzword, and I think this just might be the sixth thing which you want to add. How to be ready in the age of AI, Web3, blockchain, autonomous vehicles. Is this sixth in your list of being prepared for future?
See, I think Web3 is again what Web3 is again all dependent on data,
Correct.
right? So the core fundamental of Web3 is that nobody owns your data in web anymore. That is the core fundamental of Web3. And that is how the blockchain also really works. So I
Correct.
think the way the economy, or the way at least the industry is going to be there in the next 3 to 4 years, And the five core area which I mentioned would still hold the roost for next 3 to 4 years. And Web3, if you're looking for metaverse, right? A lot of metaverse applications will be again based on touchless or on data and will be hosted on cloud. So even if you focus on those five things, stay away from the buzzwords. I think you'll be good placed in the metaverse world also.
That's so true. I think I'll take last two questions. This I think you answered, but I think in the interest of some people joining in late, you should still answer this. Is can a QA manager reach to a CTO position? That's a very direct question. I think you have a direct answer to this.
Definitely you can reach to a CTO position. I can give you five names right now who are essentially QA managers or QA leads earlier and now are CTOs or head of engineering in companies like
Correct.
Amazon.
That's true.
So you can definitely be a CTO or a head of engineering, provided you get out of the shell of being a tester, stop playing the victim card that I'm a tester, and learn technology.
Yeah, that's the point. I think that if you break your own mindset of being just a tester, you then there is no stop. Then nothing can stop you. That the mindset has to be broken within all of us. I think that's so true. I think that's more or less we have, and we are on time also. So because just some parting thoughts to people who have stayed till the end. Uh, uh, Summarizing our discussion, if you want to share anything else.
So I'll just summarize my discussion in 3 points, right, guys? Don't stop learning. Don't go by what the majority of people are doing, because the herd mentality will always destroy you. Focus on what works for you and what you can learn. And third, don't get into the mindset that being a tester, I need to be soft and cagey. Be on the aggress. Be the aggressor. Be the
Correct.
aggressor. Focus on showing your value and don't shy away from calling out shots in a meeting, right? And don't let any developer shut you down.
I think every time I talk to you, this is the point which kicks me up every time and which I fundamentally believe that as testers we have to be more courageous, and for us to become more courageous, we have to be more prepared in our heads and more confident in our own self. And I think those are such great nuances. But I think it was a good discussion. Thank you, Vikas, for sharing your words of wisdom like every time. And every time I leave your session, I'm in awe, and then I keep discussing to different people for the next 7 to 15 days, and I hope people liked it. So thank you everyone, and thank you, Vikas, once again. Always pleasure to host you.
Thanks, guys. And people who would like to follow me can follow me on LinkedIn. So,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
don't
I also dropped in.
correct and don't expect a politically correct post from me on LinkedIn. I don't post anything politically correct.
No, it's your opinion, and I think you are entitled to it. So
Yes.
you should post it. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Vikas.
guys.
Thank you, Vikas. Thank you once again.